Well, for more on this, let's welcome in our expert panel, Harvard Law School Professor Emeritus and Newsmax analyst and the author of The Price of Principle, Alan Dershowitz. And we have former National Security Council Chief of Staff, former CIA analyst and Newsmax contributor, Fred Fleets. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Professor, I'm going to start with you. Okay, everyone was wanting this warrant. The warrant shows that Trump is under investigation for potential obstruction of justice and violation of the Espionage Act. Legally, what does that mean for Trump, and does that change anything here?
No, I think that we always suspected that they would use these very broad statutes. Look, I'm old enough to remember when these statutes were used against Vietnam protesters, against Daniel Ellsberg, and civil libertarians and the ACLU were up in arms, jumping up and down for how terrible it is that these broad statutes have been used against political dissenters. Now these same people are jumping up and down saying, oh my God, thank you for using these terrible unconstitutional statutes. As long as you can get Trump, that's good enough for me. Look, there's nothing surprising in the search warrant itself or in the inventory. What might present some surprises, obviously, is the affidavit signed by FBI agents. They'll probably redact the names of the informer, whoever it might be, or informers, but it will provide much more information. But this all supports the conclusion that there should not have been a search. There should have been a subpoena. The government knew about all this. The government was negotiating for months. They issued a subpoena. They could have gone to court any day to enforce the subpoena. Instead, they went by way of a search warrant, which undercuts the Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendments. The goal here is to get an indictment of any kind against Trump so that Democrats will then say that he is disqualified from running, which would be unconstitutional. As a liberal Democrat, I want to have the right to vote against him in the next election, as I voted twice against him in previous elections. I don't want a bureaucrat telling me who's going to run for president.
Fred, I want to get to the affidavit in a minute, but the receipt shows that there were documents that were highly classified and part of a highly classified program run by the United States. It's even higher than top secret. So if this is the case here and he had these documents, Trump is saying, hey, I declassified all this stuff. If he did, wouldn't there be a paper trail to all this? Shouldn't Trump bring that forward?
Well, there's a lot that we don't know here. Now, you've probably heard Democrats saying on TV today that although the president has ultimate declassification authority, there's a process he has to use. That's not true. He could simply wave his hand, write it on the back of an envelope. It is at his discretion on what's going to be declassified. But there's other things we don't know here. We know that the Trump team was negotiating with the FBI. They wanted an extra lock in the room where this material is being kept. There was no danger of this material being leaked to anyone. And I agree with Alan that this could have been done with a subpoena. There was no reason to take the extraordinary step of searching a former president just a couple of months before an election.
Okay, so Professor, you brought up the affidavit. Many people are saying, this wasn't a part of it. Everyone's saying we need to see the affidavit. What will that tell us that we want to know? Why is that so important in this scenario?
Well, the only important part of a search warrant really is the affidavit. It's the input by the investigating officers stating what basis they have to show probable cause for searching, probable cause for believing that perhaps a violation of these overbroad statutes may have occurred. Usually these affidavits are not released until much later in the process. And when they are, they're usually redacted. But they're not redacted as to the material. They're redacted usually as to sources and methods. So I think we can expect a lot to be forthcoming. And I'm glad that both sides have now agreed to disclose the affidavit, because the American public has the right to guard our guardians. We have the right to see whether or not the people involved in the process, FBI agents, Attorney General of the United States, magistrate judge, all complied with the Fourth Amendment and with the Fifth and Sixth Amendments. One of the reasons they went for a search is because Trump, of course, did invoke the Fifth Amendment in New York, and he could have invoked the Fifth Amendment as to whether he was obliged to produce himself certain documents. Of course, the government could have given him what's called production immunity, but they didn't want to go through that. And instead, they went through the blunderbuss method of search. And yet, Garland the other day said that he believed that the standard practice in the Justice Department is, whenever possible, to use less intrusive methods. I would love to see him answer questions as to why this is less intrusive, why these same statutes weren't used by the Justice Department against Hillary Clinton and Sandy Berger, whether his statement that the law must be applied evenly and equally is being followed in this very controversial case.
And Fred, let me talk to you about the timeline here. Some people are pointing out, as our own James Rosen did, that the judge magistrate had approved this on August 5th, gave them until later in the month, but they did it on the 8th. Does that raise any flags for you?
It does. I mean, I don't know what the urgency was here. I don't know why this was done, except it seems like it was time to make sure that Donald Trump was busy and that he was not in town. But I want to raise another issue. I was with the CIA for 19 years. I worked for the National Security Council, and I think Alan will agree to this. We have a real problem in this government with over-classification. The fact that a document is stamped secret or top secret doesn't mean it is. And it's a real problem, and I'm sort of wondering whether these are phone logs or whether maybe these are letters that Donald Trump exchanged with Kim Jong-un. We don't know what this stuff is, but let's not run to the conclusion that these are the nuclear codes. I don't think that's the case.
Of course not.
Yeah, because there are reports out that these are potentially nuclear related. Even if they are nuclear related, is that concerning?
The Washington Post.
But even if they are, they were safe. They were not anywhere that were vulnerable. And remember, it used to be my friends, the civil libertarians on the left, that complained about overclassification. Now they're the ones jumping up and down saying, it was classified. Oh, my God, it must mean that it contained the nuclear codes or etc. It's just nonsense. Let's wait and see. I remember the Pentagon Papers case where the Solicitor General of the United States, my former dean, basically argued the country would be destroyed if these materials in the Pentagon Papers were revealed. They were revealed and nothing happened. Overclassification is often designed to protect the reputations of the people who made mistakes and want to cover their screw-ups up by classification.
An interesting point. I'm out of time, but what is it going to take to get the affidavit out? What is the next process there?
It'll be out. It'll be out. It'll be out. Both sides have agreed, so it'll be out.
Okay. All right, so we should be waiting for that shortly.
But it'll
Professor
be
Dershowitz,
redacted.
Fred, thanks for
We won't
being
get the
here.
whole thing, but we'll get parts of it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, hopefully that will show us more. We'll be covering that. Gentlemen, thanks for being here.